Thank you very much. It's always good to be back in Perth, which is actually my hometown, presenting at the Good Oil Conference. It feels like the Good Oil's witnessed the emergence of FAR as the next sort of medium to large oil producer listed on the ASX. To save you listening to me for another 10 minutes, if you don't want to, I'm going to give you the wrap-up summary right now. Back in 2014, we were involved in the world's largest oil discovery for that year, a field called SNE, offshore Senegal. And in the intervening period, we've now drilled 11 successful wells offshore Senegal, bearing in mind that the SNE discovery was one of the first offshore deep water wells to be drilled offshore Senegal for 40 years. And we had enormous success there with 3 billion barrels of oil in place. And we're heading towards a development of 500 million of those barrels, with FID taking place towards the end of this year. At the end of 2022, FAR will be a 15,000 barrel a day producer and generating about $100,000 of free cash per year for the company. So there you have it. So please bear with me and I'll talk to you a little bit more about how we got here, what's going on in and around us, where's Senegal, and what's in store for the company in the next couple of years. So we're an ASX-listed company, of course, and as I said, we're aiming to be one of the ASX's largest oil producers by the end of 2022 and heading into 2025. We have a focus area of the MSGBC Basin, which is the Mauritania, Senegal, Conakry, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau Basin, and you can see why we call it the MSGBC. It's so much easier. And we are heading towards the development of our SNE oilfield asset. At the end of this year, we should be at FID, and we should be producing about 100,000 barrels a day on a gross basis when we get to peak production. FAR is a 15% joint venture partner in this venture, hence we'll be heading towards 15,000 barrels of oil a day. There's plenty of upside in our stock outside the SNE field. We've got, when we explored offshore Senegal, not only did we drill the SNE discovery, we also drilled a discovery called FAN. We've drilled 7 wells into the SNE field now, deep water wells, all with 100% success rate, and we've drilled 3 other discoveries that are within tieback distance of the hub development in SNE. So lots of upside in appraising these other discoveries we've made in Senegal and also in our exploration portfolio in the MSGBC Basin. Our market cap today, we've just changed to the US dollar as our functional reporting currency, so pretty much everything I'll be talking about today is in US dollars. But of course, we're listed in Australia. Our market cap's about 400 million Australian dollars, about 270 or so US. We had 36 million US dollars in the bank at the end of Q2, just over 50 million Aussie dollars. And as I said, we're heading towards a development. Our net interest in the SNE field is just under 70 million barrels. We've got 4 pillars that we consider our pillars for success going forward in FAR. First is that we have conventional oil. It's of course fungible. There's a large demand for it, particularly in West Africa. And we've got a number of exploration prospects that we're going to be building on from our conventional oil in Senegal. We have very strong partnerships. We've been working in Senegal since 2006 and formed very good relationships with the government. We've been in Guinea-Bissau since 2008 and in the Gambia for nearly 2 years. Our international partners include Woodside, Petronas, CNOOC, and we are certainly punching above our weight on the international scale. Our home continent, is Africa, and we believe that there is masses of potential in the African continent for conventional oil discoveries. Our focus, of course, is in the northwest of Africa in the MSGBC Basin, and in this particular part of the world, we are a substantial acreage holder. The PSC terms that we have, or licence terms in our various holdings, are very favourable. For example, in Senegal, the contractor take, which is the parties, is 70 to 75% for the type of developments that we're talking about. We're very well disciplined with our capital. Our overheads per year are just over 5 million Australian dollars. We keep lean and mean. We've been very successful in farming out our frontier exploration wells. When we first entered Senegal, we were We were funded through the first $200 million of expenditure by ConocoPhillips and Cairn Energy, and last year we drilled the first well offshore the Gambia, just south of Senegal, for 40 years, with Petronas carrying us through the $50 million of drilling. The phase of the industry we're in at the moment is we're also looking down the barrel of very lean or minimum development costs because of where the industry's been in the last few years. Rig rates, subsea, FPSOs are all coming off a very low base, and we've managed to lock up the contracts for most of the facilities that we'll need for the S&E development going forward at reasonable rates, and we can see those increasing over the next few years. So it's a good time to be developing a big oil project. On the map on the left here, you can see where our home is, basically, in West Africa. Senegal is the westernmost tip of Africa. Our acreage holding is here in the orange. You can see the S&E field sits in the middle. You can see the gas cap in red and the oil leg in green. We have a number of other prospects that sit around the S&E field, but notably we have the Fan and Fan South discoveries and also S&E North that will be moving forward to appraise at the same time we're developing the S&E field. To the north of us, you'll see a lot of other blobs, and BP and their partners in the north of Senegal have made up to 60 TCF of gas discoveries. And in fact, the Tortue development of 30 TCF of gas reached FID at the end of 2018. So they will be entering the offshore floating LNG market with large gas being exported from Senegal in the next few years. So two very large development projects taking place in the country. To the south of Senegal, we've got the A2 and A5 blocks in the Gambia. We'll be drilling an exploration well in the Gambia in 2020 and also one down south in Guinea-Bissau in 2020 as well with our partners. There's a lot of activity going on around here. CNOOC, who's our partner in Guinea-Bissau, is also drilling two wells in their own right in the AGC Profonde, which sits between Senegal and Guinea-Bissau. Total, who hold the acreage to the west of us in Senegal, will be drilling another exploration well in 2020. BP are looking for a rig to drill two exploration wells to the north. And I think that's just about covered it, but quite a lot of activity going on in and around us in this part of the world. As I said, S&E was the world's largest oil field discovered in 2014. If we look at the large oil fields that have been discovered in the last 10 years, it still sits there as number 3, which is a huge achievement for a small Australian company, considering we had 90% of that project before we farmed down. So we're really the fathers, or I like to say mothers, of the oil exploration industry in Senegal. The S&E field itself is fairly straightforward. It's got two main reservoir families, the S500s, which are the lower reservoir units, and the S400s, which are the upper reservoirs. As a joint venture, we'll be developing this field in a phased development. Although it looks quite compact here in this slide, the field actually covers a very large area of about 40 square kilometres. So it's a very large area, and we'll be developing phase 1, which is over the core of the field, which sits over where you can see the gas cap in the upper reservoirs shown on the image on the right. And that will be tapping into about 200 of the roughly 500 million barrels of oil that we'll be developing in the full phase development. So coming on stream in phase 1, there are 200 million barrels over the core, and then over time we'll be tying back the other barrels in the field. So we're development ready. The block is called the RSSD block, the Sangomar Deep Offshore Block. It's about 100 kilometres offshore from Dakar, which is the capital of Senegal. The API of the oil is 32 degrees, so nice and sweet and good quality oil. We've got a total recoverable oil of just under 450 million barrels. But I'm going to put that into context for you. We've got about 3 billion barrels of oil in place. So we're being very conservative at the moment with the recoverability factors, and this is going to create huge upside potential in the S&E development going forward in the future. It's getting better recoverability out of these reservoirs. The reservoirs have got great porosity and permeability and great TOCs, total hydrocarbon content in the reservoirs, so we're expecting to get much better recoverability than we've currently planned for. We're in deep water, but not too deep, and we'll be using a floating production and storage offtake vessel, an FPSO, with tankers offloading. And in phase one, we're estimating up to about 23 wells will be drilled. About 16 of those will be producers, with the remainders being water and gas injectors to support the development. So where are we at with the development? We entered FEED at the end of 2018. We're through that now, and we've submitted a preliminary version of the development plan to the government. I say it's preliminary, it's 99% done. There are about 300 technical files that have been submitted to the government to support the development plan, and we're expecting approval around the end of November for the development plan. Major contracts have been awarded for the subsea and for the drilling and completions already, and we're completing negotiations for the FPSO contract at the moment. Final investment decision will be the end of the year, and we will be entering an exploitation phase that gives us rights to exploit this oil for the next 30 years. So some indicative economics for you. We're still going through a CapEx optimisation phase at the moment, but I thought it was important to show you what a great looking production sharing contract we have in Senegal. So if we look at the oil barrel on the right there, you can see that if our revenues are $65 a barrel oil, which is the base case that we're using for our economics, you can see once you deduct operating costs, CapEx, taxes and profit share for the government, there is a contractor share of just over $17 a barrel. And if you multiply that out by our 15,000 barrels a day, you come up with a really nice healthy number of just under $100 million a day, $100 million a year of free cash flow to FAR, which is hugely exciting for us. So where's the upside? I talked a little bit about it. You can see the S&E field in the middle of this graph. You can see the Fan discovery to the northwest. We have another little discovery to the north of S&E called S&E North. Not surprisingly, we're not very imaginative with our field names at the moment. All of these discoveries are within tieback range of the hub of where the FPSO will be based and the hub development at S&E. So we're looking to tie those in later on in the S&E development. They're actually not included in the 500 million barrels of recoverable oil. That's just from the S&E field alone. We've also got a significant gas cap of a couple of TCF of gas, and we'll be bringing that to shore in 2024. That's not been included in the economics. We're still in pre-FEED phase for the gas development for the field. FAR also has the two blocks to the south in a different joint venture. FAR is the operator with 40%, and we will be drilling a well in A2, which is just to the south of the S&E field, later into 2020, probably around mid-year. The S&E field has been shown to extend down into A2, and it's likely that we'll be putting a well into that extension next year, which will be pretty exciting for us and our joint venture partner Petronas. So I've said this many times, but it's feeling like it's getting much closer, that this discovery is going to be very transformational for FAR and for our shareholders, but also for the people of Senegal, of course. S&E is underpinning what FAR is planning in terms of growth for the future. We have ambitions to be a much bigger producer than just S&E oil, and the cash that's being generated will help us to get there. So our focus area, of course, is the MSGBC Basin. In Senegal, we'll be reaching FID at the end of this year. We'll be in the design and construction phase for most of 2020, with the development drilling starting towards the end of that year, or mid to end of that year. At the same time, we'll be likely appraising Fan or S&E North with an exploration or appraisal well at the same period, and then, of course, with first oil expected towards the end of 2022. In the Gambia, we will be drilling a well subject to farm out, and we're in the process at the moment looking for a partner to farm down and carry us through the drilling of that well. We're shooting some 3D seismic further to the south. Drilling of the well is not dependent on the 3D. And then in the next couple of years, we aim to be drilling basically a well a year in the Gambia, dependent on success there. We've got a commitment to drill a well in 2020 in Guinea-Bissau, and Chinook farmed into our operators' equity share, and they are now a 55% partner with us. We have just over 20% interest in that block, so that's very exciting as well. Of course, we can't do what we do without being responsible citizens, and there's a lot of talk, as we've heard already this morning, about the naughty old oil industry and the environment. I'd like to give you a good story about the environment in Senegal. Currently, Senegal doesn't have any indigenous oil production, and most of their power is generated through importing oil from Nigeria. If we can replace that Nigerian imported oil with domestic oil, we save about 73,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions. So that's a great statistic for the country, and I think we shouldn't ignore the fact that Senegal's also planning a 2030 emergent plan, and they're planning to build their nation and their economy on the revenues from oil and gas over the next few years. So we got good support from the government. You can see here the President Macky Sall, good photo opportunity for me last year with him. We've had great support in terms of lowering the barriers to getting the build completed in Senegal. It's the fastest growing economy in Africa. They're growing at just under 7% at the moment. Big infrastructure projects there, cranes all over the place when you go. It's terrific, a new airport that's really modern Western standards. We've been a first mover in country, and so we enjoy great relationships with the government. And our chairman, in fact, was chairman of a mining company that built a large gold mine on the border of Mali and also a large mineral sands mine on the north coast of Senegal. So we have a history of building projects and getting them accomplished and bringing them to cash flow in Senegal. We're on target to be the largest mid-cap oil producer. We don't produce any oil today, but by 2022 we're going to leapfrog a heap of our peers on the ASX. And that's just the beginning. We have ambitions to be a 30,000 barrel a day producer by 2025, so double the production we'll be getting from S&E. Thank you very much for listening to me. We do have a disclaimer, of course, so please seek advice before you look at FAR any further. But it's a very exciting company. We're headquartered in Melbourne, and we welcome anyone who's coming by to come to our office and say hi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cath. Thank you, Cath Norman. That takes us to morning tea, and during morning tea you might like to